The seventh session of the Senate in the third regular session of the 16th Congress is hereby called to order. Senator Joseph Victor G. Ejercito will lead the chamber in prayer.
Good afternoon, Mr. President.
Gracias.
Do not lay up for yourselves treasures on earth, where moth and rust destroy and where thieves break in and steal. But lay up for yourselves treasures in heaven, where neither moth nor rust destroys, and where thieves do not break in and steal. For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. Matthew 6:19-21. Heavenly Father, we claim this word as we commence the deliberations for the 2016 national budget this week. Commission us to be good and wise stewards over our national treasure, so that we would enact a just, sufficient, and compassionate national budget. With your guidance, enable us to fill in the gap and improve our education, health, housing, social services, infrastructure, transportation system, and economy. Push us to invest on the potential of our people through employment and livelihood opportunities, so that we could use all of these blessings to alleviate the living conditions of our people. We ask all of this in the name of our Lord Jesus Christ, our Savior. Amen.
Amen. The Secretary will call the roll. I'm sorry. The Senate Choir will lead us in the singing of the Philippine National Anthem, after which the group will render a song entitled Magsimula Ka.
Bayang magiliw, pwersa silanganan, alab ng puso, sa libriboy buhay. Lupang hinirang, duyan ka ng magiting, sa manlulupig, di ka pasisir. Sa dagat at bundok, sa simoy at sa langit mong bagaw, may dilagang tula at awit sa paglayang minamahal. Ang kislap ng matawat mo'y tagumpay na nagniningning. Ang bituin at araw niya kailan pa may di magdidilim. Lupa ng araw ng walhatit pagsinta, buhay ay langit sa piling mo. Aming ligaya na pag may mga api, ang mamatay ng dahil sa'yo. Magsimula ka, matinang kay gandang umaga ng may ngiti sa iyong mga mata. Sa pagkakaiglis, gumising na. Magsimula ka, parin ang pangarap mong tunay. Habang ang lakas, iyong pangtaglay. Sa paglaw, pagkakasanan. Sa
Thank you. The Secretary will now call the roll.
Roll call of members. The Honorable Senators Angara, Aquino, Binay, Cayetano Alan Peter Compañero S., Cayetano Pia S., Defensor Santiago, Ejercito, Enrile, Escudero, Estrada, Gingona, Hunasan, Lapid, Legarda, Marcos, Usmeña, Pimentel, Po, Recto, Revilla, Soto, Trillanes, Villar. Senate President Rilon.
17 senators are present. The chair declares the presence of a quorum. The majority leader.
Good afternoon, Mr. President, to our esteemed colleagues. Mr. President, I move that we dispense with the reading of the Journal of the 6th Session, August 5, 2015, and consider the same as approved.
Any objection? Hearing none, motion is carried.
Mr. President, with the consent of the Senate, I move that we consider on third reading proposed Senate Resolution number 1334 under Committee Report number 137. This is the bill on the ratification to the protocol, RE, the Convention on International and Civil Aviation, Mr. President.
In order.
With the consent of the body, may we request the Secretary to read only the title of the said bill without prejudice to inserting into the Senate
Secretary
Journal
will-
and record the text thereof.
Secretary will read the title of the measure.
Proposed Senate Resolution number 1334, resolution concurring in the ratification to the protocol relating to an amendment to the Convention on International Civil Aviation, Article 3 BIS.
Mr. President, on August 6, 2015, copies of this measure, as approved on second reading, have been distributed to all members of the Senate, thereby complying with the 3-day rule found under Section 26, Paragraph 2, Article 6 of the 1987 Philippine Constitution. We are thus ready to approve the measure on third reading. I move for a roll call vote, Mr. President.
Secretary will conduct the roll call vote.
Roll call vote. Senators Angara, Aquino, Binay, Cayetano Alan Peter Compañero S., Cayetano P.I.S., Defensor Santiago, Ejercito, Enrile, Escudero, Estrada, Gingona, Hunasan, Lapid, Legarda, Marcos, Usmeña, Pimentel, Po, Recto, Revilla, Soto, Trillanes, Villar. Senate President Rilon.
16 senators are present. 16 affirmative votes. No negative votes, no abstention. Proposed Senate Resolution 1334 is hereby approved.
Mr. President, with the consent of the Senate, I move that we consider on third reading proposed Senate Resolution number 1336 under Committee Report 139. This is the bill on the 1999 Montreal Protocol, Convention for the Unification of Rules for International Carriage by Air.
Any objection? Hearing none, consideration of the measure is in order.
With the consent of the body, may I request the Secretary to read only the title of the bill without prejudice to inserting into the Senate Journal and record the whole text thereof.
Secretary will do so.
Proposed Senate Resolution number 1336, resolution concurring in the accession to the 1999 Montreal Convention for the unification of certain rules for international carriage by air.
Mr. President, on August 6, 2015, copies of this measure as approved on second reading were distributed to all members of the Senate, thereby complying with the 3-day rule found under Section 26, Paragraph 2, Article 6 of the 1987 Philippine Constitution. We are ready to approve the measure on third reading. I ask for a roll call vote, Mr. President.
Secretary will conduct the roll call vote.
Honorable Senators Angara, Aquino, Binay, Cayetano Alan Peter Compañero S., Cayetano Pia S., Defensor Santiago, Ejercito, Enrile, Escudero, Estrada, Gingona, Hunasan, Lapid, Legarda, Marcos, Usmeña, Pimentel, Po, Recto, Revilla, Soto, Trillanes, Villar. Senate President Rilon.
May I ask Senator Gingona to come into the hall so she can be counted at one of those. Thank you, Senator Gingona. 17 affirmative votes, no negative votes, no abstention. Proposed Senate Resolution number 1336 is hereby approved on third reading.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, with the consent of the Senate, I move that we consider on third reading Senate Bill number 2752 under Committee Report number 130. This is the bill on microfinance non-governmental organizations, Mr. President.
Consideration of the measure is in order.
With the consent of the body, may I request the Secretary to read only the title of the said bill without prejudice to inserting into the Senate Journal and record the whole text thereof.
Secretary will do so.
Senate Bill number 2752, an act strengthening non-government organizations, NGOs, engaged in microfinance activities for the poor.
Mr. President, copies of this measure as approved on second reading have been distributed to all members of the Senate last August 6, 2015, thereby complying with the 3-day rule found under the 1987 Philippine Constitution. We are ready to approve the measure on third reading. I move for a roll call vote.
Secretary will conduct a roll call vote.
Honorable Senators Angara, Aquino, Binay, Cayetano Alan Peter Compañero S., Cayetano Pia S., Defensor Santiago, Ejercito, Enriles, Escudero, Estrada, Gingona, Unasan, Lapid, Legarda, Marcos, Usmeña, Pimentel, Poe, Recto, Revilla, Soto, Trillanes, Villar. Senate President Drilon.
18 affirmative votes, no negative votes, no abstentions. Senate Bill 2752 under Committee Report 130 is hereby approved on third reading.
Mr. President, may I ask for a minute suspension?
1 minute suspension.
Ready to resume, Mr. President.
Session is resumed.
Mr. President, as previously agreed in the all-member caucus last week, that we will again go into caucus today to discuss the committee report on the Bangsamoro Basic Law. So I move to suspend and move into the Senator's Lounge for the caucus.
All right. The session is suspended. May the chair request all the members of the chamber to retire to the Senator's Lounge, where we can consider, where the two committees, Committee on Local Government and Committee on Peace and Unification, can consider the report on the Bangsamoro Basic Law, with Senator Marcos presenting the report. Session is suspended.
issue. Pinangamin na natin. Yung ano may hindi maganda. Actually, ang pinansin niya yung pagkain. Yung bis na purihin niya ako, pinansin. Siya dapat magsabi kasi siya naglagay doon. Sarap naman yan. Akala ko sarap naman yan. Hindi pa kasi ako diretso. Hindi sa akin, tinala ako sa office ko. Doon namin kinain. Pero hindi kasi, kailangan siya sa akin. Ninurakot ko lang. So, kayong dalawa talaga. Ang ending gano'n. Pero siya yung binigyan. Walang forever man. Ay, naku, ang tagal nito. Ito mo, bibilin pa niya yung mga 3 days na lang pwede magbukay sa akin. Hindi na siya edible. Mayabang lang ako sa Facebook. Hindi pa ako nabayaran. Tapos nagtanong pa ako, bakit wala mo po? Ay, nakalimutan. Ay, pwede ba yun? Basta nakalimutan na yun.
You have a privilege speech? Pabukas na. Oh.
Ready to resume, Mr. President.
Session is resumed. Majority Leader is recognized.
Mr. President, I move that we proceed with the reference of business.
The Secretary will read the reference of business. Mr. Majority Leader of the order of business at the later hour, reference of business, and the other bills which are on the agenda.
Mr. President, I
Yeah.
motion
You
ask for a minute suspension.
1 minute suspension.
Ready to resume, Mr. President.
Session is resumed.
Mr. President, with the consent of the Senate, I move that we resume consideration of Senate Bill number 2482 under Committee Report number 181. This is the bill on the naval architecture, Mr. President.
Any objection? Consideration of the measure is in order.
Mr. President, the parliamentary status is that we are in the period of interpellation. I thus move that we recognize the sponsor, Senator Trillanes.
Senator Trillanes is recognized. We are in the period of interpellation.
Mr. President, upon the consultation in the chairman and checking with the secretariat, there is no senator who has to ask clarificatory questions. I thus move that we close the period for interpellation.
Period for interpellation is terminated.
Mr. President, I move that we suspend consideration of Senate Bill 2482 under Committee Report 181.
Consideration measure is suspended.
Mr. President, with the consent of the Senate, I move that we resume consideration of Senate Bill number 2762 under Committee Report number 140. This is the bill on strategic trade management, Mr. President.
Consideration of Senate Bill 2762 is in order.
Sir President, the parliamentary status of the measure is that we're in the period of interpellation. However, no other senator wishes to interpellate on the measure. I thus move that we close the period for interpellation.
Period for interpellation is terminated.
Sir President, I move that we open the period for committee amendments.
Period for committee amendments is in order.
Mr. President, there are no committee amendments.
Sir President, I move that we close the period for committee amendments.
Period for committee amendments is terminated.
Sir President, I move that we open the period for individual amendments.
Individual amendments is in order.
Sir President, I move that we recognize.
Senator Trillanes is once more recognized.
May I ask for a minute suspension, Mr. President?
Suspended for 1 minute.
Ready to resume, Mr. President.
Session is resumed.
Mr. President, I move that we recognize the minority leader to propose his individual amendments.
The minority leader is recognized to propose amendments on Senate Bill 2762.
Yes.
Senator Soto.
Thank you, Mr. President. Will the distinguished gentleman please accept the proposed amendments that we'll be proposing to his bill being sponsored, 2762, Mr. President.
The minority leader is most welcome, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. President. May I start with Section 5, Mr. President? In the definition of terms, Mr. President, well, subject to style, provide a separate subsection for the definition of dual-use goods using the definition on page 5, lines 24 to 28.
The proposed amendment is accepted, Mr. President, considering that we transferred a portion of the definition of strategic goods. I move to further amend Section 5, subparagraph T of Tango in order to put more substance to the definition of strategic goods. Section 5T will now read as follows. Strategic goods refer to products that, for security reasons or due to international agreements, are considered to be of such military importance that their export is either prohibited altogether or subject to specific conditions. Such goods are generally suitable to be used for military purposes or for the production of weapons of mass destruction, and for the purposes of this act are goods listed in the NSGL under Annex 1, Military Goods, Annex 2, Dual-Use Goods, Annex 3, Nationally Controlled Goods, and any unlisted goods as provided for in Section 11. Mr. President.
I concur, Mr. President. The distinguished gentleman has just recorded the style that we wanted on the section. Thank you, Mr. President.
So, any objection? Hearing none, amendment approved.
Just to complete it, Mr. President, for the record, again, subject to style also, on Section 5, definition of terms, provide a separate subsection for the definition of nationally controlled goods, which shall be defined as strategic goods placed under unilateral controls for reasons of national security, foreign policy, anti-terrorism, crime control, and public safety, Mr. President.
The proposed amendment is accepted, Mr. President. Since we accepted to separate the definition of terms of nationally controlled goods contained in Section 4, may we therefore move to delete on page 2 from lines 23 to 26 the entire sentence starting from the article "the" all the way down to the word "goods." So move, Mr. President.
That is an amendment
Yes.
attributed to who? Sponsor?
We concur, Mr. President. We accept.
Any objection? Hearing none, approved.
Thank you, Mr. President, and thank you to the distinguished sponsor. Again, still on page 5, line 35, after the word verbal, insert written and delete the word communication.
What does the sponsor say?
The proposed amendment is accepted, Mr. President.
Any objection? Hearing none, approved.
Thank you, Mr. President. On page 6, line 12, subsection X, after the word "to," delete the word article A, and after the phrase strategic goods, insert the phrase "within the Philippines." This was a subject of our interpellation, Mr. President. So the subsection will now read, transit refers to shipment of strategic goods within the Philippines and those entering and passing through the territory of the Philippines with an ultimate destination outside the Philippines in such a manner that the strategic goods remain at all times in or on the same carrier. This was a subject of the interpellation, Mr. President, to make sure that we also include travel within the Philippines, or as concurred in by the gentleman during the time.
The proposed amendment is accepted subject to style, Mr. President.
Any objection? Hearing none, approved.
Thank you, Mr. President. Now, still on page 6, line 31, after the word "includes," insert "but not limited."
Accepted, Mr. President.
Any objection? Hearing none, approved.
Thank you, Mr. President. Page 7, section 6, lines 14 to 15. Delete the phrase "and the National Security Advisor."
Accepted, Mr. President.
Any objection? Hearing none, approved.
On the same page and section, from lines 24 to 27, delete subsections A to D, namely Department of Environment and Natural Resources, DENR, Department of Science and Technology, DOST, Department of Agriculture, DA, and Department of Health, DOH. May we move also to adjust the letters in the subsections accordingly afterwards, Mr. President.
What does the sponsor say?
Accepted, Mr. President.
Any objection? Hearing none, approved.
Moving on to page 10, Mr. President, line 22. after the word act, delete the phrase to ascertain whether certain goods fall under the NSGL or is subject to authorization under this act, period, any person.
I move to suspend the session for
1
a
minute
minute.
suspension.
Will be the responsibility of any person subject to this act.
ignorance of the law. Kasi, ligado. Tsaka ipapublish ito. Baka magreklamo lang yun.
We ready to resume, Mr. President?
Session is resumed.
The proposed amendment is accepted, Mr. President.
Any objection? Hearing none, approved.
Thank you, Mr. President. On the same page, line 24, after the words strategic goods, insert the phrase under the NSGL.
The proposed amendment is accepted, Mr. President.
Any objection? Hearing none, approved.
Still on the same page, line 25, delete the phrase shall be required. Therefore, it will read, or the provision of related services to obtain an authorization from the STMO as provided in this Act, Mr. President.
The proposed amendment is accepted, Mr. President.
Any objection? Hearing none, approved.
Just for the record, Mr. President, to complete the picture, may I read in Section 10, Paragraph 1? It shall now read as follows. Responsibilities of persons. It shall be the responsibility of any person who intends to engage in the export, import, transit, and transshipment of strategic goods under the NSGL or the provision of related services to obtain an authorization from the STMO as provided in this Act and its implementing rules and regulation. In addition, any person who intends to engage in the re-export or reassignment of strategic goods is required to obtain an authorization when this had been made a condition for the authorization of the exports from the Philippines. Period, Mr. President. For the record.
Thank you, Senator Soto.
Thank you, Mr. President. Now, on page 14, moving on to page 14, section 15. Now, this is, well, it's included in section 15, but I'm talking of line 1 on page 14, letter E. Delete the number 8 and replace it with 7. Therefore, the section 7.
Amendment accepted, Mr. President.
Is it section 7?
Section 7.
The letter G remains?
Let me check, Mr. President. Letter G pa rin ba yung section 7? Ano na?
Yes, Mr. President.
Still G. Yes, Mr. President.
Any objection? Hearing none, approved.
Thank you. On page 17, line 5, section 24. After the word violation, delete the phrase under section 20.
Amendment accepted, Mr. President.
Does that mean that all provisions, any violation of the provisions of this Act shall expose the government officials to administrative liability without prejudice to criminal liability instead of just section 20? If that is the intention?
Yes, Mr. President.
All right. Any objection? Hearing none, approved.
And lastly, on page 19, line 33, delete the period and insert the proviso, provided further that any administrative proceedings under this Act shall be suspended pending the issuance of the IRR.
Amendment accepted, Mr. President.
Any objection? Hearing none, approved.
Thank you, Mr. President. May I request that some editorial amendments found in the bill allow the Secretariat to review the text subject to style, Mr. President.
The Secretariat is authorized to do so.
Thank you, Mr. President. And again, thank you to the distinguished gentleman from Bicol for accepting the amendments.
Likewise, Mr. President, this representation would like to thank the wisdom of the minority leader in further refining this bill.
Sir President, no other senators has communicated to us that he or she would like to interpolate. So to propose individual amendments. So I move that we close the period for individual
Period
amendments.
for amendments is terminated.
Mr. President, I move that we approve on second reading Senate Bill number 2762 under Committee Report number 140.
Any objection? Hearing none. Senate Bill number 2762 under Committee Report number 140 is hereby approved on second reading.
Mr. President, I move that we suspend consideration of Senate Bill number 2742 under Committee Report number 130.
So suspended.
Mr. President, I think Senator Trillanes would like to make a manifestation.
Senator Trillanes is recognized.
Mr. President, We are in receipt of a communication dated May 28, 2015 from the House of Representatives informing the Senate that on 25 May 2015, the House approved on third reading House Bill number 5707, to which it requests the concurrence of the Senate. HB 5707, otherwise known as the Forestry Profession Act, is actually the counterpart of Senate Bill 2055, which this chamber approved on third reading on 8 September 2014. After going through the provisions of HB 5707 and discussions on the matter with the concerned stakeholders, I move as chair of the Committee on Civil Service and Government Organization that the Senate adopt House Bill 5707 as an amendment to Senate Bill 2055 consistent with Section 35 of our rules. I so move, Mr. President.
Majority Leader,
Mr. President, may I ask for a minute suspension?
1 minute suspension. Ano ito?
Ready to resume, Mr. President.
Session is resumed.
Uh,
Yes, Senator.
I withdraw the earlier motion, Mr. President.
Mr. President, I think Senator Trillanes, we are just getting copies so that each senator would have a copy before we put the matter on the floor for a vote, and I will immediately calendar it when the copies are distributed, Mr. President.
All right. The motion of Senator Trillanes is withdrawn, and we shall await the official receipt by the Secretariat of the letter.
Mr. President, I move that we resume consideration of Senate Bill number 2890 under Committee Report 199. This is the bill on exempting PWD from VAT on certain goods and services. Persons with disability, Mr. President.
This is the bill.
2890 under Committee Report 199, just for a sponsorship speech, Mr. President.
It is not in our agenda today.
Yes, Mr. President. Yeah, with the consent of the Senate, Mr. President. This was sponsored by Senator Angara last Wednesday, Mr. President. So this is the sponsorship speech of Senator Recto. That's why I moved to resume consideration.
For purposes of the sponsorship speech, Senator
Yes,
Recto
Mr.
is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Majority Leader. Thank you, Mr. President. It has been said that the government's greatness is measured by how it treats those who are in the dawn of life. The children, those who are in the twilight of life, the elderly, and those who are in the shadows of life, the sick, the needy, and the handicapped. The same test applies to Congress as well, where on tax matters we will be adjudged more by how we have helped those who have fallen through cracks than by how we were able to plug the leaks. Mr. President, this bill is about those in the shadows, the hidden many, who do not have the muscle to lobby, nor possess the powerful voice for them to be heard above the clamor of the political season. Some are not capable of speech, but their muted state explains far more eloquently than words could ever be on why this bill must be passed. This bill has two aims. First, to exempt persons with disability from paying the VAT on certain goods and services. Second, to provide additional income tax exemption to those who are caring for a PWD. Among the goods and services to be taken out of VAT coverage are medicines, medical and dental services, hospital and laboratory fees, and local transport fares. So if a PWD rides a plane, train, ship, or bus to any local place, he will not pay the sales tax on the ticket. And if upon reaching his destination, he orders food in a restaurant in the hotel where he is checked in, he does not pay a VAT on both. Second, this bill seeks to make a person with disability a dependent for income tax purposes. A child, parent, or even a legal guardian of a PWD, regardless of age, who is incapable of self-support, can therefore claim additional tax exemption for the said dependent. The tax deduction is the same as what is currently claimed by a parent of a child not over the age of 21, which is 25,000 pesos annually. Because the bill specifies a caregiver as the one who can avail of the exemption, then a child who has a disabled parent in his care under his roof can claim the tax relief. This is in response to the situation faced by millions of families today who have turned their residences into homes for the aged. This is so because we have a culture which frowns upon those practice of letting strangers care for a parent. Even for those who are willing and wealthy enough to buck convention, there are few such facilities here. This has forced many of us to put hospital beds in our homes. With a pharmacy we can barely stock to care for our elders who draw comfort from familiar faces, as much as from modern medicine. It is only right to remove the age criteria for a PWD dependent because caring for him or her does not have a fixed expiry date. In many cases, it extends from cradle to grave. So before those who have zero tolerance against tax breaks can whip out their calculators and show the multiple zeros to scare us that this bill will hemorrhage funds, the question that should be asked of them first is this: is 25,000 pesos a lavish or a labis? Reimbursement for the annual cost of caring for a PWD, or is it kulang? The parents of an autistic child who make ends meet to pay for an exhausting and expensive care for their child will say it is not enough. The guardian or guardians of a paraplegic who push him up footbridges so he can attend school and himself to his dreams will say it is not enough. The children of those in the twilight of life who are slowly being robbed of memories but still rage against the dying of the light will say it is not enough. The siblings of a teenager who had and would never see a sunrise or the glow of a full moon, who sees the world through the raised dots in a paper, will say it is not enough. In fact, Mr. President, even if we pass this bill, and even if we make it more generous, it won't be enough to pay for what we owe the PWD nation. So let this be just our continuing amortization of the huge debt we owe them as we vow to increase our subsequent payments. For example, with the budget season about to start, we can install more and wider accessible ramps in next year's national budget. In the current year's budget, there is 100 million earmarked for the purchase of books and equipment for special education. We should expand this next year. We can also attach a special provision to the DepEd budget, which pegs the number of special education classrooms to be built next year. Also in the 2015 budget is a provision which reserves the supply of 15% of all school furniture to cooperatives run and managed by PWDs. This procurement will earmark worth about 180 million. This provision should also be applied to other goods as well. Yearly, we have a long shopping list of equipment which many qualified PWD co-ops can supply. We should insist on this because PWDs themselves would tell us that the best form of help is a hand up, not a handout. We should include PWDs in the CCT program because in the hardship index, none is more deserving of assistance than a disabled person, crippled by poverty. We should do away with conditionalities because disability in itself is the best precondition for enrollment. Also in the DSWD budget, we should increase its scandalously low budget of 11 million for assistance to persons with disability. We should direct more public work funds to construction activities that will make streets, sidewalks, pedestrian overpasses, public buildings, highways fully compliant with accessibility laws. And to enforce this, we can even command the DPWH to hire PWD consultants to check on the quality of work. I am mentioning this, Mr. President, because increasing the funds for PWD's programs require initiatives in both the revenue and appropriation side. So what's the best companion measure to this bill? It is without doubt the national budget. We should do all of the above, Mr. President, in addition to passing this bill, because it has been said that the worst kind of disability is being paralyzed from coming to the aid of those who need the help. Much remains to be done. Let me say, however, that we cannot be accused of having attention deficit disorder with respect to the plight of the PWDs. I already mentioned the various budget initiatives, which I will be the first to concede need to be increased and expanded. Second, let me point out that in the last Congress, when it was the senior Angara who was here and not the better Angara, the bill on granting higher income tax exemptions for PWDs, which I authored, was passed by the Senate, and the House passed its version too, but failed to be reconciled by a bicameral conference. There is also the apprehension that this bill will be hard to implement, a fear being fanned so as to abort it, but which falls flat on its face on two counts. First, there's already a system being followed with respect to VAT exemptions granted to seniors. Second, on the matter of increasing tax deductions for PWDs, it will not complicate filing as much as the new complicated ITRs do. Implementation can be hurdled. Yes, work needs to be done, but this pales in comparison to the handicap and hardship that PWDs have to overcome every day. The challenge is to do more for them because at 1.6 million, both their number and the neglect they suffer are too many and too severe to be ignored. Maraming salamat po, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator.
Thank you, Mr. President. I
Is
move
the
that we
majority leader
suspend.
recognized?
I move that we suspend consideration of Senate Bill number 2890 under Committee Report number 199.
So suspended.
Mr. President, with the consent of the Senate, I move that we resume consideration of Senate Bill 2834 under Committee Report 176. This is the bill on the Pag-asa modernization. Mr.
Any
President.
objection? Hearing none, consideration of the measure on second reading is in order.
Mr. President, the parliamentary status of the measure is that we close the period of interpellation last August 5. I thus move that we open the period for committee amendments.
Period for committee amendments is in order.
Mr. President, I move that we recognize the sponsor, Senator Recto.
Senator Recto is recognized.
Thank you, Majority Leader. Thank you, Mr. President. First amendment on page 3, lines 22 to 23. After the word President, comma, after the word President, delete the colon and the succeeding proviso, provided that the two of the deputy administrators shall be career officers, and replace it with a period. On page 3, line 25,
Can we just
yes,
take that up again?
yes. I will
Please
read
state.
yes, Mr. President. I will read two amendments and then repeat what it will,
All right.
what the wording will look like, Mr. President.
Okay.
Again, on page 3, lines 22 to 23, after the word president, delete the colon and the succeeding proviso, provided that the two of the deputy administrators shall be career officers.
That's deleted.
That's deleted, and replace it with a period.
All right.
Then on page 3, line 25, after the word unless, delete the phrase he or she and replace it with the phrase that person.
Okay.
Wala na to. Okay. Then on page 3, line 27, delete the word 3 and the number 3 on the same page, line 28, and replace with the word 5 and the number 5. After the word sciences, delete the period and replace it with a colon, after which insert a proviso to read as follows: provided that the two of the deputy administrators shall be career officers. The amended Section 6 shall now read as follows. Section 6, Qualifications. No person shall be appointed as administrator or deputy administrator unless that person is a citizen and resident of the Philippines, of good moral character, of proven integrity, with an advanced degree of meteorology or related fields of study, and with at least 5 years of competence and expertise in meteorology, geophysics, astronomy, or allied sciences, provided that the two of the deputy administrators shall be career officers. That is the effect of the three amendments, yes.
Any objection? Hearing none, approved.
On page 6, line 13 to 14, before the words fund, delete the words trust. Hence, it will just read as Section 10, Pag-asa Modernization Fund. There is hereby created the Pag-asa Modernization Fund, which shall be used exclusively to fund the modernization program, which shall include whatever funds that may be available from, but not limited to the following sources. On the same page 6, line 17, before the word income, delete the word net and replace it with the word gross. Then on the same page 6, line 18, after the word PAGCOR, insert the phrase at a minimum amount of 1.5 billion per year for 2 years after the approval of this act. After which, on the same page 6, lines 19 to 20, delete the phrase not less than 70% of the and replace it with the phrase the entire. The amended Section 10A shall now read as follows. A. 3 billion pesos from the gross income of the Philippine Amusement and Gaming Corporation, PAGCOR, at a minimum amount of 1.5 billion per year for 2 years after the approval of this act, to be taken from the 50% share of the national government, provided that the entire 3 billion shall be utilized for capital outlays.
Any objection? Hearing none, approved.
Still on page 6, line 28, before the word fund, delete the word trust. Hence, the amended Section 10E shall now read as follows: all interest income of the Pag-asa Modernization Fund. And finally, still on page 6, line 29, before the word fund, delete the word trust. Hence, the amended provision shall now read as follows: the Pag-asa Modernization Fund shall be administered by the administrator of Pag-asa in accordance with existing government budgeting, accounting, and auditing rules and regulations.
Any objection? Hearing none, approved.
That is the end, Majority Leader, of all the committee amendments.
Just a question before we leave the topic.
Yes.
The interest income on the modernization fund shall also be utilized for capital outlays,
That is correct.
and therefore that the 100% the 100% provision for utilization for capital outlays will include
Interest
Interest.
income, if there is any, that is correct.
if any,
Yes.
you spread it into the record for purposes of,
Yes.
of
That is the intention.
the intention.
All for capital outlay.
All right.
Thank you for the clarification, Mr. President.
Mr. President, I move that we close the period for committee amendments. For committee amendments.
Committee amendments terminated.
Mr. President, to give the other senators a chance to go over a clean copy, I move that we suspend.
Before that, the minority leader wishes to be recognized and is recognized.
If the majority leader will not mind and the gentleman, the sponsor will accept, Mr. President, may I be recognized to ask a clarification on the proposed the amendments that he made, the committee
Please
amendments?
proceed.
Thank you. This will lead into my individual amendment, Mr. President. Actually, very few, but the first amendment that I wanted to propose was already included in the committee amendment, so thank you very much for that. The second one was also included into the committee amendments. But I have a concern on the other amendment. This is found on page 3, line 28. Yes, I understand that what the committee proposes is that 2 out of 3 shall be career officers. This is how you presented it, Mr. President.
Yes, that is correct.
Yes. I was thinking that, what is the difference between a career officer and a career executive service officer?
Can you tighten the language?
Pareho lang naman at this position,
The reason I asked, Mr. President, is because I wanted to... All right, I'll wait for the answer first, Mr. President.
Frankly speaking, at this position, they both will be career executive officers at this level.
All right, my proposal, the reason I asked, Mr. President, is because my proposal on page 3, line 28, is to include a phrase, provided that the administrator or deputy administrators shall be career executive service officers, or CESO, instead of just 2 out of 3 shall be career officers. If you will willing to accept, I will propose it during the period of individual amendments.
We'll accept at the appropriate time, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. President. May I ask the majority leader to... shall we wait for the others, Mr. President? Individual amendments? Next time na? Okay.
Mr. President, to respond, I think the other members will also benefit from a clean copy with the permission of the sponsor.
No objection, Mr. President.
So, all right.
On that note, Mr.
Thank you.
President, I move that we suspend consideration of Senate Bill 2834 under Committee Report 176.
Consideration of Senate Bill number 2834 is hereby suspended.
Mr.
The
President,
Secretariat is directed to prepare a clean copy for purposes of the introduction of the period of individual amendments.
Mr. President, may we acknowledge the presence of and welcome to the Senate farmer leaders of Villa San Isidro, Calawag, Quezon. They're here with us today.
With so acknowledged.
Mr. President, just some administrative matters. First, Mr. President, since Senator Escudero has been elected as chairperson of the Senate Committee on the Environment and Natural Resources, by operation of the various laws creating the oversight committees attached to it, he now becomes the chairman of the following oversight committees: Joint Congressional Oversight Committee on Clean Water Act by operation of Section 33 Republic Act 9275, and Joint Congressional Oversight Committee on the Chainsaw Act by operation of Section 11 of Republic Act 9175. I just, for the record, Mr. President.
Noted.
Sir President, upon consultation with the Majority Leader, on May 13, 2015, the Senate in plenary has approved the primary referral of Senate Bill 2687 to the Committee on Education, Arts, and Culture, while secondary referral was made to the Committee on Finance. Sir President, with the consent of the body and concerned chairpersons, I move to change the primary referral of Senate Bill number 2687 from the Committee on Education, Arts, and Culture to the Committee on Civil Service and Government Reorganization, and secondary referral should be the Committee on Finance, from the Committee on Finance to the Committee on Education, Arts, and Culture. This, Mr. President, is the bill on an act granting educational assistance and benefits to dependents of members of the Armed Forces of the Philippines, PNP, BFP, Bureau of Jail and BJMP, NBI, the Drug Enforcement Agency, PDEA, and Philippine Coast Guard. So since it's both educational assistance and benefit, it would be more apt to be under the Committee on Civil Service and Government Reorganization. In accordance with our rule, Mr. President, I so move.
Any objection? Hearing none.
Thank you, Mr. President. Sir President, I move that we adjourn the session until 3 o'clock in the afternoon, Tuesday, August 11, 2015.
1 minute before we act on the motion, we're going to have 1 minute suspension. Reference to business. Tapos na. Reference to business. Oh, basahin mo natin ito. Ano ba?
Sir President, may I withdraw my motion to adjourn so that we can proceed with the reference of business.
Motion to adjourn is withdrawn.
Sir President, before I move to proceed with the reference of business, can Senator Soto would like to make a manifestation.
Senator Soto is recognized.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. May I manifest that Senator Cynthia Villar be likewise made be made a co-author of Senate Bill 2677, principally authored by this representation, Mr. President.
All right. So the manifestation is noted for the record.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I move that we proceed with the reference of business.
Secretary will read the reference of business.
Senate Bill number 2891, an act to protect Filipino mothers and children from malnutrition by establishing a maternal and child health care program, appropriating funds for the purpose by Senator Sonny Angara.
Health and Demography, Women, Children, Family Relations, Gender Equality Finance.
2892, an act for strengthening the system birth registration of children in need of special protection in the Philippines by Senator Grace Poe.
Women, Children, Family Relations, Gender Equality Finance.
2893, an act granting incentives to individuals and enterprises for the creation of green jobs and appropriating funds for the purpose by Senator Sonny Angara.
Labor, Employment, Human Resource Development, Environment and Natural Resources, Ways and Means Finance.
Resolutions, proposed Senate Resolution number 1465 entitled Congratulating and Commending the Outstanding Philippine Soldiers of 2015 awarded by the Metro Bank Foundation, Inc. and Rotary Club of Makati Metro by Senator Lapid.
Rules.
1466, congratulating and commending the awardees for the 2015 search for outstanding teachers honored by the Metro Bank Foundation, Inc. by Senator Lapid.
Rules.
1467, directing the Senate Committee on Justice and Human Rights and other appropriate Senate committees to conduct an inquiry in aid of legislation on the persistence of illegal trade with Filipinos amid the efforts of the government to curb illegal human trade in light of the Tier 2 category rating of the U.S. State Department, the 2015 Trafficking in Persons Report by Senator Lapid.
Justice and Human Rights.
1468, directing the Senate Committee on Health and Demography and other appropriate Senate committees to conduct an inquiry in aid of legislation on the reported 175.7% increase in hand, foot, and mouth disease cases by Senator Lapid.
Health and Demography.
1469, commending and congratulating the University of the Philippines Manila Choral and I Music Capella Chamber Choir for winning first, second prizes respectively in the Hulepuni category of the 61st International Habaneras and Hulepuni Choir Competition in Torrevieja, Spain on 19 to 25 July 2015 by Senator Lapid.
Rules.
1470, congratulating and commending the Philippine Army Dragon Boat Team for winning gold at the 2015 Japan Dragon Boat Championships in Osaka, Japan on 19 July 2015 by Senator Lapid.
Rules.
1471, directing the appropriate Senate committees to conduct an inquiry in aid of legislation regarding the nationwide school deworming activities conducted by the Department of Health that resulted in the hospitalization of more than 100,000 grade school students by Santa Maria Lourdes Nancy S. Binay.
Health and Demography.
1472, directing the proper Senate committee to conduct an inquiry and aid of legislation on the report that according to the 2014 Commission Audit Report, the Design Center of the Philippines spent 4.648 million pesos on the salaries of consultants due to the unreliability of its regular employees by Senator Defensor Santiago.
Trade, Commerce, and Entrepreneurship.
1473, directing the proper Senate committee to conduct an inquiry and aid of legislation on the report the authorities intercepted an illegal shipment of seashells from the to Bataha Reefs Natural Park in Palawan by Senator Defensor Santiago.
Environment and Natural Resources.
1474, directing the proper Senate committee to conduct an inquiry and aid of legislation on the report that landslide at the Simarara Panian open pit charcoal mine in Antique killed 9 workers by Senator Defensor Santiago.
Environment and Natural Resources, Labor, Employment, Human Resource Development.
1475, directing the proper Senate committee to conduct an inquiry and aid of legislation on the 2014 Commission on Audit COA Annual Audit Report that there was substantial delay in the Kalinga Apayao State College submission of financial reports amounting to 88.650 million pesos by Senator Defensor Santiago.
Arts, Education, Arts, and Culture.
1476, resolution directing the proper Senate committee to conduct an inquiry and aid of legislation on the recent Luzon floods by Senator Defensor Santiago.
National Defense Security, Local Government.
1477, directing the proper Senate committee to conduct an inquiry and aid of legislation on the report that the overall quality of work in the country is deteriorating by Senator Defensor Santiago.
Labor, Employment, Human Resources Development.
1478, directing the proper Senate committee to conduct an inquiry and aid of legislation on the report that 6 out of 10 patients in the Philippines from 2007 to 2012 have been filed by immigrants by Senator Defensor Santiago.
Trade, Commerce, and Entrepreneurship.
1479, directing the proper Senate committee to conduct an inquiry and aid of legislation and calls for the Senate to investigate the lease agreement and Subic base by Senator Defensor Santiago.
Government Corporations, Public Enterprises.
1480, directing the proper Senate committee to conduct an inquiry and aid of legislation on another skyway accident reportedly attributed to the inferior quality and height of railings being used in the thoroughfare by Senator Defensor Santiago.
Public Works.
1481, directing the proper Senate committee to conduct an inquiry and aid of legislation on the report that illegal fixing remains rampant in the Quezon City Hall.
Local Government.
1482, directing the proper Senate committee to conduct an inquiry and aid of legislation on the report that El Nino is negatively affecting rice production by Senator Defensor Santiago.
Climate Change, Agriculture, and Food.
1483, directing the proper Senate committee to conduct an inquiry and aid of legislation on the report that double malnutrition in the Philippines has increased by Senator Santiago.
Health and Demography.
1484, directing the proper Senate committee to conduct an inquiry and aid of legislation on the United Nations report criticizing as delayed and inadequate government efforts at reconstructing and rehabilitating communities affected by Super Typhoon Yolanda by Senator Defensor Santiago.
Public Works and Finance.
1485, directing the appropriate Senate committee to conduct an inquiry and aid of legislation on the state of compliance and implementation of laws empowering persons with disabilities in the Philippines by Senator Sonny Angad.
Social Justice, Welfare, Rural Development.
1486, urging the Senate committees on banks, financial institutions and currencies, and trade, commerce, and entrepreneurship to conduct a study in aid of legislation and access to financial and banking assistance of micro, small, and medium-scale enterprises, including structural constraints for their full development as engines of sustained and inclusive growth, and for the promotion of competition as a whole by Senator Grace Poe.
Banks, financial institutions, currencies, trade, commerce, and entrepreneurship.
Communications, letters from Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas transmitting to the Senate copies of the following certified and authenticated BSP issuances in compliance with the new Central Bank Act. Circular letter number CL 2015-041, 042, 043, dated 9 and 15 July 2015, and Circular 883 dated 10 July 2015.
Committee on Banks, Financial Institutions, and Currencies.
Additional reference to Business Committee Report, Committee Report number 200, prepared and submitted jointly by the Committees on Local Government, Peace, Unification, and Reconciliation and Constitutional Amendments, Revision of Codes on Senate Bill number 2894, with Senators Drilon, Soto III, Ligarda Recto, Maria Lourdes Nancy Esbinay, Escudero, Paulo Benigno Bam Aquino IV, Sonny Angare, Cayetano P. Munasan II, Gingone III, Marcos Jr., and Defensor Santiago, as authors thereof, entitled An Act Providing for the Basic Law for the Bangsamoro Autonomous Region and Abolishing the Autonomous Region in Muslim Mindanao, repealing for the purpose Republic Act Number 9054, entitled An Act to Strengthen and Expand the Organic Act for the Autonomous Region in Muslim Mindanao, and Republic Act Number 6734, entitled An Act Providing for an Organic Act for the Autonomous Region in Muslim Mindanao and for other purposes, recommending its approval and substitution of Senate Bill Number 2408. Sponsor, Senator Marcos Jr., dissenting, Senator Cayetano A.P.
Any to the calendar for ordinary business. Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I move that we adjourn the session until 3 o'clock in the afternoon, Tuesday, August 11, 2015.
Session is adjourned until August 11, Tuesday at 3 o'clock in the afternoon.